Sex is one of the basic necessities of life, whereas marriage is not. We don't think much about sex, but we think very wrongly about sex.
How do we talk healthily about sex?
Basically, we all get married to have sex, right? Men in our society also have a pressure that they feel masculine only when they control their women. If their women is not controlled by them, then they have the society looks at them like, what are you doing? I cannot even cook things that I like to eat. I always cook what he likes to eat. Love is a very temporary emotion. We have extramarital affairs and we have whatever we call that infidelity. It is happening. It will happen. It was happening. People ask me, why can't they, if they are not okay with each other, why can't they just divorce and get married to somebody else? Why should they cheat on the partner? But is our legal system so easy for us to apply for divorce today and get it in 6 months' time? No. When my son was like 8 years old, I used to send him to get napkins for me. So when he was very young, he never used to ask questions. When he was 8, 9, he came and asked me, why are you buying this quite often? I sat with him and told him this is what it is, whether he understands or not. There is a misconception that after menopause, women will not need sex. I also had my share of child abuses by my own, by my neighbors as well as by my own father.
We are surrounded by images of desire. It's on social media, in cinema, in advertising, all around us. Yet when it comes to a real conversation about sex, especially women's desire, we fall silent. Lata's book, The Toilet Seat, doesn't make a rate. It asks uncomfortable questions about how society views women's desire, their bodies, about marriage, and how marriage often prioritizes duty over dignity, and how silence, more than desire, becomes the most damaging force in our relationships. The book isn't about provocation for shock value. It's about honesty, about what happens when intimacy is denied, and about what we lose individually and collectively when we refuse to talk. Today, we are not here to debate morality. We are here to listen, to reflect, and to ask why conversations around love, sex, marriage, and freedom still make us so uncomfortable even in 2026. Please join me in welcoming the author, Latha. I would like to begin by those of us over here who may not have read the book. I'd like to reflect and ask you to reflect a little bit about your own journey. You've spoken about it right at the beginning in the book, about what you went through with people you trusted the most, your uncle, somebody who has a brother, your own father. So please tell us and reflect a little bit on that.
There is a quote which I have mentioned in the book. We don't think much about sex, but we think very wrongly about sex. So that's a way I think most of the women would have gone through abuses through somebody, either at home by the close people or by people in the public and all that. I think most of the women would have gone through this. And I don't think people would have escaped this. Likewise, I also had my share of child abuses by my own, by my neighbors as well as by my own father when I was in my teens. So I have, I think from beginning I've been looking at things in a different way. I started having a different perspective about things, the hypocrisy that was lying behind what we call marriage, our culture and all that. So when I got married, I was like, I didn't know those days. I didn't know how people even have sex. That's how I got married. But after getting married and after started having sex, basically we all get married to have sex, right? Because we in our culture we cannot have sex. At least it is changing now, but still. The normal thing is nobody can have sex before marriage. So that itself becomes a desperation for us to get married, whether we really want to get married or not. So that way, I found after marriage that there was nothing in me. It was absolutely, I had nothing to enjoy in it. I was just used. But I couldn't think of all that because I still didn't know what was said. So I thought probably, yes, normally as people say, women will not be interested in sex and only men are interested in sex. For women, it is not important. So I thought probably women, by nature, we don't enjoy all that. We are made up like that and we have sex only to get kids and all that. But after a while, though, 5 years down the line, 6 years down the line, I got separated from my husband. And of course, I got into a few relationships after that. And I could see none of them were like, in one of the thing, this title, I think I should tell you this. Actually, the title came first. It only led to the book. So after one of the sessions, like, I felt like I've been like used as a toilet seat. That's a term that came to my mind. So that is when I thought, okay, we have to talk about it, because by then I started speaking to so many people, men, women, and many come approaching us, even though they were married. I used to wonder, was it only for us it was happening, or when the men after marriage, if they come and approach somebody else, I would ask them, oh, you're married, you have you have your wife, so why are you looking out? Then but the usual answers were like, she's no longer interested. After 4-5 years of marriage, she has stopped sleeping with me or something like that. Then I started realizing it's the same, but it was not just for me. Most of the women were feeling only this way. So then what are women used as here? So why wouldn't women lose interest if they are not going to get anything out of it, if it's going to be a mundane process day in and day out? So that's when the idea started, and I started writing it as a journal. Then it became a book.
You've said in the book that the reason for perversion is suppression of desire, not desire itself. Can you tell us a little bit about your observations around that?
I think since we are not none of us, there's nothing to blame the men. In our society, we are not taught about anything. We always keep it under the wrap and say we keep it as a secret. We don't teach them anything. We don't normalize sex at all. Whereas sex is one of the basic necessities of life, whereas marriage is not. Actually, sex is the basic necessity of life. But we don't normalize talking about it. So what happens is, in most of the partners, either of them don't know how to keep each other happy, or how we should be emotionally connected, or give space, or understand the other person's needs and all that. So though the people keep having sex, there is no fulfillment. So when there is no fulfillment, you keep yearning for fulfillment. So that becomes it is not, when it is not fulfilled, you keep having that desire becomes a kind of
It
can lead to perversion.
In your observations, why do you think society in India is more concerned about policing women's desires than understanding it, whether inside the institution of marriage or outside? Why is there so little talk about understanding women's desire?
This is not today's scene, right? We have been suppressed from long years, probably. Though our society earlier, it was a matriarchal society, we shifted to this thing because we have something called, in Tamil we say karpu, virginity. So men probably wanted, once they started agriculture and they started saving food, money and all that, so they wanted to recognize their own kids. So for that they brought in something called marriage, and the women have to be their own women, so that she wouldn't go to anybody else, kind of a thing. So that's when everything should have started. So from then on, it is a fear of men. Like, if we give them all the freedom that they enjoy, then they may not have the control over women. So it all started from recognizing his own kid and passing on his property or whatever is left to him. This has started, and till date, I don't think there is a great development on this. Though, even from the 16th century, women here and there have been fighting for equal opportunities, equal status, and all that. I think we are still far away from reaching that. Probably 5% of the people have started going out, studying, going out, or doing things that they want to do. But still, I think it's basically the fear, the inferiority complex, they also have pressure actually. The men in our society also have a pressure that they feel masculine only when they control their women. If their women is not controlled by them, then they have the society looks at them like, what are you doing? So they also have a lot of pressure to keep this up. And women also got used to it over the years, that women also keep passing on the same thing to their next generation. So I think it will take a long time, but I think every one of us have to keep talking about it. Whoever think that this is not the right thing to do, then people have to keep talking about it so that we can reach that place sooner.
You've said in your book that this is not about one gender against the other, and that you try to understand desire on both sides and what it leads to. You touched upon a marriage. We understand the reasons on why society is constructed it. But there's a beautiful chapter that you've written that there are certain things in a marriage, if done, there can be desirability as well as what they call a happy marriage. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about it, but also the anecdote, if you can share with us, on how emotions play a huge part on how women can have long, quote-unquote, happy marriages, but feel emotionally extremely unfulfilled.
Most of the marriages appear to be very successful, like from, well, we see from outside. But when you go and talk to the concerned people, you can understand what they are going through, because most of the time we only fake success, we only fake orgasm. You see, everything is faked here. Like nothing is like what we see is what it is. It is not like that actually. So I have a friend whose mom was 70 when she fell ill, and I went to see her, and her husband and her were supposed to be the best couple among the colony there. So people used to admire them, people used to be jealous about them, say that they are the beautiful couple and all that. But when I was writing this book, actually I had started writing this book, so I thought I should be a beautiful couple. I thought I'll take some input from her. So I was checking with her and her husband was not there. So how have you been living like this? How could you make this so successfully? And she was like, who told you that our marriage is successful and all that? It has never been that. We are only showing off. I cannot even cook things that I like to eat. I always cook what he likes to eat. He takes care of me, but he takes care of me physically in the sense when I'm ill, he takes me to the doctor, he gives me medicines regularly and all that. But we have not had sex for so many years, and he is living like he's not interested. So I don't think I have lived a fulfilled life, either emotionally or sexually. That's what she told me. So this is what is happening in most of the marriages. If marriage has to be successful, first of all, one thing is we cannot promise to love someone. That there itself is, I have a problem. When you get married, we promise, there is a oath we take that I will love you till the end of my life. Is love a permanent this thing? Love is a very temporary emotion. It could stay for a day, it could stay for a lifetime. It is not in our hands. So taking an oath that I will love you forever is itself a hypocrisy. I can take care of you till my life, that is fine. I can feed you till the end of your life, that is fine. But not I love you till the end of my life. But despite all that, if two people get together and get married, I'm sure if both the people are matured enough to understand each other's aspirations, give them enough space for growth, support each other, and also understand treat the other person as a friend. I always believe any relationship thrives when the friendship is the basis for the relationship. Either it is parental, parent-kids relationship, or siblings, or husband-wife, whatever it is. If friendship is the basis of a relationship, it is definitely thrive because we are not possessive. We don't become possessive of them. We give them enough space. We don't keep nagging them. So it is a space that we give. It is a respect more than love. It is a respect that we give the other individual as we expect respect from them. And if we have some self-respect, I'm sure nobody will treat the other person badly. So it's all like treat the other person like you treat yourself. You expect to be treated, and understand that every person is an individual, and that's it. But there are lots of things. Book has many more points.
We shall leave some for the book, but that chapter is extremely telling on what can be some of those healthy rules that we can look at for a good relationship. But respect and self-respect and friendship are the cornerstone of it, and sometimes we can work at that. I want to talk about your views on infidelity. We always look at it from a moral perspective, right or wrong. How have you seen it in the book, and what are your views on it?
There is nothing right or wrong in this world. That's what I believe in. This is a fact. We have extramarital affairs, and we have whatever we call that infidelity. It is happening. It will happen. It was happening. So this is a fact. Leave alone whether it is right or wrong and all that. It will happen because whenever this concept called marriage came in, when the concept called marriage came in, I'm sure the extramarital affair also started that time, because only when you get married you can have an extramarital affair. Before the concept of marriage, we wouldn't have had that, obviously. And human beings are not monogamous by nature. We are polygamous. So it happens. We will not be like, we will be attracted to other people, and even if we are not doing anything, we'll definitely come across people who attract us, and probably some people may be conditioned no, I shouldn't do this, it's not morally right and all that. They may not do it, and some people may do it secretively, and some people may be bold enough to accept it. But you cannot avoid this, it is happening. So there is nothing right or wrong, because again, coming to our legal system, people ask me, why can't they, if they are not okay with each other, why can't they just divorce and get married to somebody else? Why should they cheat on the partner? But is our legal system so easy for us to apply for divorce today and get it in 6 months' time? No. Unless both the people agree, mutually agree, we cannot possibly get a divorce in 6 months or 1 year. I have known people who are still, the case is going on and on and on, one person refusing to give or demanding something that is not affordable by the other person, or for creating some problem or the other. I've known a few people who are still struggling to get a divorce even after 15, 20 years, even after their own kids have grown up and got married. So what happens to that life? If they wait for the divorce and then only they have to get into another relationship, what happens to that individual's relationship life? Who's going to be responsible for all this losses in his life? So unless everything becomes easier, we cannot keep saying that legally, why don't you get a divorce and then get into all this? Why do you cheat and all that? No, if somebody goes and tells his partner, no, I'm okay, I'm done, if I'm going to have somebody else in my life, is it going to happen easily here? No. It needs a different kind of a maturity for both of them to accept and be like that.
And that is the maturity that you speak about also in live-in relationships, that there will be emotions, but it's not permanent, and you need mature partners to understand if one gets into it. How do we talk healthily about sex? What would sex education for all ages and genders look like?
Normalize it. Like, don't keep your kids away from. In our families, like, we don't even touch or hug or kiss our partners in front of the kids. Why are we doing that? So it's all a very normal thing. It's just affection shown to the partner. Kids have to see that. So you can talk to the kid, and if the kids like grow watching the parents hugging each other, kissing each other, I don't think it is going to question you why you are doing that. It's all the atmosphere that we create. So after a point in time, probably 8, 9 or something, I'm sure kids start asking you questions on their own, because these days kids are very smart. They start asking you questions, and stop being the parent that who needs control over the kids. Let's be friendly. Once a kid is born, it is a different individual. We have to give that respect to the kid and start treating them. Yeah, we do take care of them, but that doesn't mean we control them. Just be friendly with them. Answer every question of theirs honestly. Don't try to be secretive about anything. When my son was like 9, 8 years old, I used to send him to get napkins for me. So when he was very young, he never used to ask questions. When he was 8, 9, he came and asked me, why are you buying this quite often? I sat with him and told him this is what it is. Whether he understands or not, start talking. Let him probably understand in a year or two or something. But at least let's not lie about things. Let's be honest about what happens, so that kids get used to all this, and never put the kids in a separate girls' school and boys' school and all that. I'm dead against it. Why are you keeping boys and girls away from each other? Normally, the world is full of so many genders. It's not just about man and woman. There are so many genders. It's a spectrum. So let them get used to all this. Why are we bringing in this distance from them? So because only this distance creates lot of curiosity, and they have to find out something. They want to explore something on their own. Just allow them to be themselves. Just allow them to be with each other, play with each other, be friendly with each other. I think there's a lot of things that we have to think of and change in our yes.
So normalizing it as early as possible and continuing with that. Other way, there are lots of young women as well in the audience. And Lata, my last question is, if a young woman is reading Toilet Seat, what would you like her to feel and take away from it?
Most of the women in our society, they have not known women can achieve orgasm. They have not even aware that women can achieve orgasm, that their body is capable of enjoying the pleasure, and they have every right to take care of their need, and they have every right to talk to their partner and make him understand that she also has needs, and both of them together should be able to enjoy it and share it, rather than most of the women I see, since they don't get anything out of it, we always talk in terms of the woman giving and the man taking. So there also the frustration sets in for women. They always say once a relationship breaks up, what the women say is, he used me. You would have heard this. He used me and now he is leaving me and all that. She should understand, if she had enjoyed everything with him, if she had had a pleasure, she wouldn't do that, because she would also enjoy that. So there is nothing called using each other. But unfortunately, this is what is happening. So I think she'll understand better her rights over her body, the pleasures that she is capable, that women are also capable. And age is not a criteria for women to have sex. And there is a misconception that after menopause, women will not need sex, because that's what the men want their women to be like. They don't want to be she should be more responsible towards the kids, family and all that, and she will not need it. That's what they have taught us. But that is not true. As a man who we believe that needs sex till the end of his life, even a woman needs it. It all depends on the individual. It doesn't depend on the gender.
Depends on the individual. Lata, thank you so much for sharing your views candidly with us, and thank you, audience. You've been fantastic.